welcome back to Room 237 as I continue my marathon of Italian horror and giallo films. And the last 22 videos in a row were all gialli, so I figured why not do a horror film for this one. And it's by one of my favorite Italian directors. Used to be number one, but he's still top three probably. I would say the 1980s were pretty good to Lucio Fulci. At least in Italian horror and Euro cult horror, it's a decade that Fulci helped dominate along with Dario Argento. Though I'd say Argento probably had more hits than misses and had a little bit more consistency than Fulci. But Fulci's good films I like a lot more, or not a lot more, but more than Argento's. Still love Argento though. And, I mean, as far as horror goes, he had great films, like all three films in the Gates of Hell trilogy. He had the Gialli New York Ripper and Murder Rock. But and then there were some other films like the Poliziotteschi film Contraband, fantasy film Conquest, sci-fi Warriors of the Year 2072, and then an erotic drama Devil's Honey. The last three of which I have not seen. Not terribly interested. And then, but there was also a bit of a dip with Fulci, even going back as early as 1981. I was never the biggest fan of The Black Cat. Really did not care for Manhattan Baby that much. Still need to see Zombie 3. And the last film he did in the 1980s was this one. The back says 1987, but I think it was released in the summer of 88. I think is what it said, August of 88. Of August 15th, 88. I'm going with 88. But it was his film, Aenigma. Which, I don't know why it's spelled this way either. And I think in some areas, maybe Germany, but I could be wrong, it went by the name of Demonia, which would be a whole other film by Fulci in the 90s, which I've also reviewed. And this is the 7 release. I know there's a Blu-ray. They had it when I got this, but this was cheaper. I can live with that. Unfortunately, I would have to put this in the class with Manhattan Baby and The Black Cat. I would say, I don't know about Black Cat. I really got to give that another watch. I did rant on it, but I think I was unfair. I kind of want to give it another watch. But I can say it is a better film than Manhattan Baby. But it's definitely part of the lesser half of the 1980s for Fulci. There's some great ideas in here. It's obvious what it's influenced by, and it does do a good blend of like Carrie and Patrick. But so it does have some. It is clever with its influences, but then there's other ideas where it's just kind of feels more derivative, like Phenomena. And I'll probably put myself in the majority where even back then people were disappointed because they thought it was going to be Fulci's return to early 80s gore Fulci. And there are some gory scenes. I would say half the deaths in this feel like Fulci deaths. The other ones are really silly, the kind of silly looking. One of which is, of course, the infamous snail death, which Fulci, he does like to have swarms and hordes of things go after people. And the girl getting covered in snails until she dies, like going down her throat and her nose, It's no tarantula from the Beyond scene, but I would say even though the idea isn't as good, it's still pulled off better than the cats from Demonia or birds from Manhattan Baby. But anyway, getting into the behind the scenes. Oh, and this was a film that Fulci was very proud of. He saw it, I think, more as a transitional film. I'm not sure what exactly he was trying to get out of it, but he was very proud of it. I think he even said that he considered it one of his finest, if not his finest work. I would have to disagree. But he wrote the screenplay with Giorgio Mariuzzo, whom he collaborated with on a number of films like Contraband, House by the Cemetery, The Beyond, and this. And I guess this was a co-production with Yugoslavia because this is where some of the producers were from, and it was mostly shot on location in, what was the name of the place? Sarajevo, which phone's plugged in. Supposedly, they were gonna do some shooting in Massachusetts where it takes place, but I guess some of the actors insisted on staying in Yugoslavia. And yeah, it is another all-girl college where weird things are happening, which happened a lot in the 80s. I think that's part of the phenomena influence, along with, it's sort of centering around the girl that's picked on, which I don't know how well you'll be able to see, but this girl, which she's not in the film much, but she's the reason all the weird, deadly shit is happening. And stars Jared Martin as Dr. Robert Anderson, Lara Lamberti as Eva Gordon, but she's credited as Lara Nazinski, and Miliana Zirahevic as Kathy, credited as essentially the same name. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. And you get an uncredited appearance by Sabrina Ciani, who was in the 1980 Mondo Cannibal, which I've reviewed, by Jess Franco, and Cannibal Terror. And an uncredited cameo by Lucio Fulci as an inspector, which you always get. And he says, because the previous year he left production of Zombie 3, which he said was over disagreements. It was believed it was because he fell ill. He said it wasn't, but he looks like he lost a lot of weight in the brief scene that he's in this. So, who knows? But, and the story is essentially, it opens up with this woman putting eyeliner on. Her friends are putting a dress on her. She's got this very special date. She's in a car with this guy. I think it was Fred. Yeah. And, she's in the car with him. They start to kiss. And then all of a sudden, get in a spot, like out in the woods, all these headlights come on. And it's all the kids from school. Yeah, she's pretty much the Carrie. She's always picked on, always bullied. And this was just another prank. But embarrassed, she runs out of the car. Some of the cars start chasing her with some of the girls leaning out the windows, yelling and laughing at her. She runs around a corner and is hit by another car and put into a coma. Which, yeah, again, I don't know if you can see that, but which those shots, I don't know why, but it just reminds me of something I'd see in Argento film. Her name's Kathy. When you see Kathy all hooked up. Although she just had this one gnarly scar with a few stitches that are barely holding it together. And her mother is a custodian for the uh, St. Mary's girls girls university in Boston. And then basically the thing of the movie is the girls involved or the people involved are having these supernatural deaths happen to them, seemingly to be controlled by Kathy, who is in a coma. Although at the same time, there's this new girl named Eva who arrives, and she apparently it's kind of like a Silent Hill thing where, and I don't know if this is a twist because they made it seem more so at the end. This is where the whole uneven, like, I don't know if, like, supposedly Eva is Kathy. She's the, I don't know, the physical, I don't know, she's a real person, but like I thought she was just possessed by Kathy somehow, but apparently it is her, like almost like there's two different, almost like Silent Hill. You have the one that's in the hospital bed and then the one that's going out doing everything. But I'm not really sure why she's needed, because there's a couple of the death scenes, Kathy shows up and she's like transparent, and then when the character's dead, she just kind of walks backwards and disappears into the wall. One character is actually killed by a mirror version of himself, who then walks off. And basically, yeah, Kathy starts a relationship with Dr. Anderson, who's Kathy's doctor. I'm guessing because Kathy's in love with him also. And yeah, she's seen as like a trouble girl around the campus. Sorry, I just had to read up on something. So again, this is where I think the writing gets either kind of messy or uneven, because apparently Eva is her own person, but throughout it all, because she stays, I think, in the same room as Kathy did, and she ends up becoming possessed by her. So it's not necessarily like Silent Hill. It's not like this physical manifestation has come out to help her while she's in a coma. She's just possessing this promiscuous, sassy girl that just happens to live in the same dorm as her. And she basically starts helping out get some of the other kids killed. Like, there's one guy, Fred, who I guess Eva, it seemed like she had a thing for. He's the first one to die. He's like a bodybuilder. He's strangled by, he's looking in the mirror, and the mirror version comes out, and he's like strangling him. They rule his death as a heart attack. And I will say, like, when he's looking in the mirror, when the mirror version comes out, he's like, looks like he's pushed up against plastic. Then he finally breaks out. It's all like black behind him. There are some stylish scenes. Not as stylish as his previous films, but definitely more so than something like Manhattan Baby. There's this other girl whom Eva called the biggest bitch at school. There's a field trip to, well, actually, it's later, but like there's this other girl that when they're served dinner, they get snails, and this girl, Virginia, is grossed out by it. So that night when she goes into her dorm, her bed's covered in snails. But when she goes to get the headmistress, who every 2 seconds is like fixing her glasses, of course there's nothing in the bed. She gets in the bed, and that's when you get the most iconic scene, I guess, if you can call it that, where she's just covered head to toe in snails. Doesn't do anything. It feels like it goes on forever, but you see them kind of blocking her nose, covering her mouth. She suffocates. The bitchy girl, there's a field trip to a museum. She loses an earring, a very special one, which she doesn't lose it. Eva steals it. So Eva helps her break into the museum at night, but then leaves her there. And I will say this scene was cool because the girl looks up at this painting and it kind of looks like a scream where like blood is drips on her, and she just stands there screaming at it, but then it's all gone. Also the painting, it's like a cherub with a sword. You actually see, almost looks like a Monty Python animation, stabs someone. That's when the blood comes out. But then this statue comes to life and it like crushes her, but it looks really silly. It looks like a rubber suit. Definitely one of the silliest deaths in the whole movie. Also, and I don't know if these were flashbacks or if they were just other kids that I think they were flashbacks because they were the same ones that we see in the beginning of the film helping Kathy get ready for her date. Where is it? Also, there's scenes where Kathy's mother, like her eyes glow red when she watches the girls walk through the halls, which really only happens like once or twice. But I'm guessing that's how Kathy, I guess she went through her mother, then into Eva. Also, there is one weird editing where, because Eva has started to see Dr. Anderson, and they're talking about the girl that got killed by the statue. And when they're done talking about her and how she's a bitch, they drive off, and then we get this short clip of her in like slow motion, kind of like cheering or whatever, and it fades to black, almost like a TV show going into commercial. It's the only time I think the movie does that, so it feels really out of place. I'm just trying to find here where the... Okay, so this wasn't a flashback. I thought this was. But, eventually, Eva... she starts having, like, violent outbursts, like, attacks her, sort of quiet, nice, roommate Jenny, just throwing clothes at her, calling her a bitch. But then the headmistress, like, sends her away to the same hospital that Anderson works at and lives at, apparently, or sleeps there while on shift. And apparently, at one point, Eva runs away, which actually before that, one second. I think it's before she gets sent away to the hospital. There is a very cool, stylish dream sequence with Anderson where he's having sex with Eva. And I mean, it's all black around him, just there, lit up by like red and other colors. And it looks pretty cool. Where she just like bites him on the chest and then like bites his lips. And like she gets like straight close to the camera with the bloody mouth. So that's probably one of the more stylish and visually interesting parts of the film. at one point, and she really starts becoming obsessed with Anderson, writing love notes, which he doesn't seem to care about. It does hint that he's kind of a playboy doctor with these college girls. But, and this is where it gets confused. I guess she didn't go to the hospital. I guess her mom picked her up and she went home because of the problems she was causing. I thought she went to the same hospital. But at this point, he's hooked up with Jenny, her roommate, who is one of the girls involved with the prank. So she's probably the most sought after victim because, or antagonist, however you want to look at it, because she was involved with Kathy's prank and she essentially stole Eva's love interest, or at least she sees it that way. So yeah, I thought this couple was the couple from the very beginning that helped Kathy get ready. But Eva runs away from home and goes back to the school, and she finds this girl, Kim, who was one of the meanest girls of the prank. Like, she's getting ready to go see her boyfriend, but she's able to project, again, this like supernatural black magic and telekinetic powers across the board. It's like she can even make other people have visions. She makes Kim have visions about, ripping the blanket off her boyfriend and he's decapitated. Which I thought the neck stump was a little tiny. But eventually, after a long screaming scene, she falls out a window. And then Tom shows up, and Tom's decapitated with it looked like metal shutters on the windows, cuts his head off, and then there's an overhead view of her body and his head rolling over next to hers. Head looks really fake, but it looks like a Fulci effect. It has that Fulci charm. Which I did want to say, when the girl was at the museum, there was this awesome scene where before the statue comes to life, there's this other statue holding a severed head. I think it's Kathy's head. And saying, like, it's me or something, like the eyes blink and she talks, but it's like this bloody head. And just the way it's shot, it looks really creepy. So, as far as scares go, that's probably the best shot. And then Anderson's sex dream sequence is probably the most visually stylish. And a few of these deaths, Kathy's mother witnesses them. And then you get the climax, which is Jenny goes to visit Anderson at the hospital, but she gets trapped in this room, this marble. This is actually a cool set. It's this marble room where there's these like marble, I don't know, call them like they're like tables, but they're shaped more like a sarcophagus or something, with all these bodies covered in sheets. I'm guessing the tormentors. Kathy's tormentors. And Eva's there talking to her about, I can kill you however I want. I can make you die 1,000 ways. But it sounds like both Eva and Kathy are talking to Jenny because she kind of fucked over both. Also, there's one more thing I wanted to say, but I don't know what it was now. Anderson is trying to get in the room to help her, which, she walks into the room by mistake and then the door disappears, which it's cheap 80s, like, fade effects when things disappear. Like, I think there's one where Eva turns into Kathy or vice versa. And it's pretty much just like a fade effect. Like the example I always use is the original Wolfman, kind of like that. But also, Kathy shows up in the scenes with Kim and Tom, where she will like then walk backwards and then just disappear into the wall. So it's like if she can appear and make things happen, I don't really know why they had to add the character of Eva and have her possess her. It just feels like there's too many ideas going on. I thought it would have been better if she just, if she had the power to just show up and be this evil spirit that can make shit happen. I think it would have been more even if they went that route. And then, Eva corners Jenny. Anderson's trying to get in. She has a scalpel. She goes to stab her. Actually gets Anderson's arm because he does get in. And then all of a sudden, Jenny freezes. It's slow motion and she freezes. And then we see her fall to the floor. Reason for that is because we then see the intravenous drip is pulled out of Kathy's arm. We see it hanging with some blood dripping out of it. Her life support machines have been turned off. Kathy's mother undid everything. She knew what was going on. She's the cause of the supernatural deaths and decides to put her to rest. Which, at first we see her mother close her eyes, then it cuts to the mother, then when it cuts back to her, the eyes are open. Which, if Eva is only possessed, I guess if Kathy dies, she does too. I didn't know that's how possession worked, unless I missed something. But then you do get, I do like the scene how the camera starts to, pan up as we see Eva's body on the ground, on the floor, which then, kind of fades into Kathy's room where we see her body in almost a similar position. And it just keeps panning out till eventually we're outside the hospital and it just keeps going up. There's this blue light. And then you get smoke. And it ends on the end credits roll over the class picture where Eva's the one in the center. The song and then the song from the very beginning also plays. The only piece of music that I can say really stood out to me as like, okay, that's 80s Fulci music, would be the scene when Eva has Jenny cornered in that marble room. It's just that 80s synth. I know there were other pieces, but I can't remember on top of my head where exactly they were placed. Excuse me, but yeah, not Fulci's strongest, but not his weakest. I definitely put it over Manhattan Baby, definitely put it over Demonia, which that was 90s, but either way. I'm not going to say Black Cat because I do want to give that another shot sometime. I do like the ideas. I like the ideas of it. I do think it does represent or use its influence of like Carrie and Patrick cleverly, and it does work well for its story. But then other things like Phenomena and some of its other influences just feels more like it's copying almost. And it also feels like there might just be too many ideas going on at once. Like I said, I wonder what it would have been like without the Eva character and just this spirit or whatever of Kathy was showing up and killing these people. I think that would have been more even. It probably could have done more. And I was a little disappointed because the reviews on the back say it's ultra gory, non-stop gory, really the only gore scenes would be like the decapitation vision, and then when Tom is actually decapitated, uh, there's more just blood, not really used in a gory way, but just blood like was coming out of the painting. I love the shot of the statue holding the severed head. But so yeah, there is a lot to like about this film. Uh, I would say there's not as many memorable shots or cinematography as some of his previous films. It definitely does feel more Fulci than Manhattan Baby and Demonia. I still need to see films like Voices from Beyond, Door into Silence, House of Clocks. I still haven't seen those yet. But, and yeah, this came out 8 years before Fulci would pass away. And it did wrap up the 80s for him. I could say I liked it. Like, this is not a rant by any means, but it's definitely on the lower half of his films in quality and with how much I enjoyed them. But anyway, that's all I got for Lucio Fulci's Aenigma, and I still have not a lot, probably around a dozen Italian horror and gialli to get to before this marathon will end. I do have plans for October. I might make a video about that soon. But yeah, I just picked this up yesterday, and it's been probably 23 videos. Oh yeah, it's been 23 videos since I've done actual Italian horror, not just a gialli. And come to think of it, the last one was Manhattan Baby. So, but yeah, Fulci's last film in the 80s, not his best, but still not his worst. Anyway, thank you for watching.